Final hour overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We'll get to our best bets, brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Chris Johnston coming up here in just a moment. Robert Herjavec will join us later in the hour as well. He was on the private jet on Friday when all hell was breaking loose. So Robert will join us and get his take on all of that.
I have one question for him. Private jets now have Wi-Fi and that. Is his phone blowing up?
We'll find out in half an hour.
That's
we'll ask
all
him
I
in half
have
an hour.
for him.
We're looking forward to that.
These PJs have high-end Wi-Fi now. Like his phone must be, and he can't unless he probably could have put a tweet out. It said I'm on the jet.
Yeah, I'm sure he could have. I mean, maybe he got on there, fell asleep. Right? It was early. He was coming home.
That's
it's a 5-hour
true. Phone's
flight.
sitting upside down.
Who knows? We'll get to the bottom of that in about a half an hour. And again, CJ coming up here in a few moments. The Leafs are in action tonight. The Leafs are winning games. The Islanders have been winning games. The Oilers are winning games. Edmonton's won 7 in a row.
Wow.
All of a sudden, they're back in the swing. They're back in the mix. They may have played themselves out of a top 3 spot in the Pacific. That's what the start may end up doing to them.
Yeah.
That might be the penalty that they have to pay, because even with 7 wins in a row, they're 11 points back of LA.
Yeah, I could see them the first wild card spot.
That feels like what they have to circle at this point, which is 100% attainable. You win 7 in a row, you're back to 500.
They're 3 points out right now.
3 points out with games in hand.
Exactly.
So
they're probably
right there.
favored to get that spot.
I would think so.
Oh, they are.
Based on
They
the
should
teams
be.
that are there, but you got to. It's still so early in the season. Ottawa's played 22 games. There's other teams that have played. Columbus has played 30 games.
30 games.
And
I don't like that.
I don't like that. Because
don't like that.
you're a player and you're scoreboard watching and standings watching all the time. But you look at it, the disparity of these games. I know it gets picked up here recently, but and teams get a week off here or there. It's just getting into a groove. I don't know. It should be kind of just laid out the same, but it's not. There shouldn't be a team that is 8 games ahead of another team.
That is crazy.
It shouldn't be.
That is crazy, because even it's confusing just following the standings.
Yeah. Right.
Because, technically Ottawa's a point behind Columbus, but they have 8 games in hand.
Right.
They have a +8 goal differential.
Right.
They're 500. They should still be able to find some positivity in that room.
Yes.
I'm not convinced Ottawa is going to make the playoffs. It's been a bad start. A lot of home games, soft schedule. They have not helped themselves, but they have been a team that's got better as the season has gone on in past years. If they replicate what they've done in past years, they got 60 games left.
Yeah, literally
right?
60
literally
games
60
left.
games left. Now, again, they're going to need 75 points, I think, to get in.
Yeah.
That's pretty high winning
A lot
percentage.
of work, a lot of work
not easy,
ahead of them.
but it's doable.
But it's hard to then do you go by point percentage wins? Is that more or point percentage?
Right.
Do you do it? Is that more of an indicator?
I think it
based on the
is. It
games?
should be more. It's more accurate assessment of what's actually happening.
It's hard to decipher because
Yeah.
you're trying to look at teams. What have they been doing? Who's been playing well? Nashville coming in against the Leafs were 8-2,
Right.
And then they won last night too. They've played pretty good hockey. It's just it'll be interesting to see. This is the other thing too. There's only a couple bottom feeder teams. Everybody else is kind of lumped in.
Even San Jose's come alive.
Got points last night. They
Yes.
lost in overtime.
Right. They're
Or
starting to
shootout.
win some games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they're 5-3-2 in their last 10.
Yeah.
so they're hanging around, but don't you think they'd want to sell off? Aren't they trying
Yeah,
to
they
get,
are. San Jose's one of the bottom feeder teams, regardless of what's happened recently. Anaheim's there. Chicago's there.
terrible.
Columbus, I believe, is there. And then I think there's a couple of teams. Seattle's there too, man. Seattle's really been disappointing. They're 8-14-7. That's a bad record.
Yeah, they've struggled.
They've struggled.
One
They
win
were
in their last 10, I think.
Yeah, that's
that,
an issue. I think in the end, Montreal's probably down there. I know Habs fans don't want to hear it. I don't love St. Louis. There's a few different teams that I think will be there in the end.
the
Eventually it
dust
will
will
shake
settle.
out.
Yes.
But
They're all kind of lumped.
it is.
And think of it. I was looking at this last week. Is goalie the save percentages? The bottom 4, two of the coaches have been fired already.
Right.
Yeah.
So now and Carolina's in one. They've lost 4 in a row. Had a closed door meeting the other night in Minnesota. So there's lots of teams still trying to find their groove. And we just talked about it in the last hour. The Leafs, that was, for me, that was their most consistent 60-minute effort I've
Right.
seen in recent. Maybe I'm sure there was one earlier.
No,
this
but
season.
I don't know if there was.
Played
man. This
really
might-
well.
That was it. I think.
They looked
Solid.
really,
Just
really
solid.
good. That's
Yeah.
right. Like a lot of it can be broken down to goaltending. You look at Edmonton, their save percentage, their goals against the last 7 games, best in the league.
Yeah, it's been.
7-0.
They're getting saves.
Now they're scoring goals too.
Yeah.
Like they're dominating at this point, but their PK's been great. Like everything's breaking their way all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to win games. Here's our TSN hockey insider, Chris Johnston, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. How you doing, CJ?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Well, we're doing well. We're just trying to figure out the NHL. Trying to figure out the whole, basis of the standings where you got Ottawa, who have only played 22 games. Columbus has played 30. Edmonton started the way they started. Now they've won 7 in a row. They sure look like a team that's back in the hunt. I guess we'll begin there before we get to the Leafs. I mean, how much of what Edmonton's done recently is a new coach bump, McDavid getting healthy, Skinner making stops, combination of all of the above? Where do you stand on Edmonton recently?
Well, it's hard to ignore, McDavid's surge here in this run. I mean, he was something like 90th in league scoring prior to that winning streak, and obviously has exploded and moved up much closer to where we expect to see him in those kind of categories. And I think that helps make everyone look better. Obviously, they've had a couple lopsided wins. They've been putting up some big nights and making things easier on the goaltending and their defensive play. And so I think it starts there. A lot of people, including I think someone in the Oilers organization, didn't necessarily feel they had a coaching issue when it came time to fire Woodcroft, but they just were in such a spot where the hole they dug was there was no end in sight to it, and so I think that's kind of how they arrived to that point in time. But it's a funny league this year. I can't remember what it was. Someone I was speaking to recently said it feels like no team is good. Like every sort of quote unquote good team you feel like has holes or some questions about them, and I kind of concur with that. I mean, Vegas obviously off to a very hot start after winning the Cup. Boston's been right back there, but there's a lot of teams with big expectations, especially in the East, that are maybe not living up to them so far. Carolina, Tampa, and the like.
CJ, so with that in mind, and it sounds like the marketplace is going crazy as far as trade chatter. Do you feel like it's around the corner for maybe a big trade or a significant trade? Because, I see that there's general manager lining up for Ethan Bear right now, and to me, there's players, and nothing against Ethan, good player, but I think there should be, these teams that are, if they are going to sell or they look at moving players, shouldn't the marketplace be heating up here so that we might be seeing some trades very soon?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, look, you have a week from tomorrow until the roster freeze, and so that's kind of a window where I think you could see a little bit of action, and because mostly what I said is like a little bit more impatience than we typically see this early in the year. I think a lot of general managers are looking at their teams and just don't like what they're seeing, and I think maybe because things do appear to be a little bit more wide open in terms of. I mean, who's going to win the Stanley Cup? It would be really hard for me to say right now today. I think that there's a lot of teams that feel if they can get, to a different level, if they can make some moves and find a groove that, this is the sort of a year to push in for it. So, it's hard to say if it's all going to break this soon. It's not normal, but I think this doesn't feel like a normal year either. And so we got 8 days, give or take, till the roster freeze kicks in, and there certainly is a lot of chatter going on around the league.
We've made a lot of Brad Treliving's, entrance into the Toronto market, CJ. Haven't talked as much about Kyle Dubas' exit and where he's ended up, but looks like he's taking a little bit of fire in his first year as GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and certainly shielding his coach, Mike Sullivan, from some of that fire in his press conference recently after, what have they lost? 7 of their last 9, 4 in a row. What do you make of Pittsburgh's chances to pull out of that spiral, and what do you make of how Dubas has done to date?
Well, I think it was a tough spot because a lot of people sort of thought Pittsburgh were one of the winners of the offseason, call it. After making the Karlsson deal, they're very active on July 1st in the early days of free agency and bringing in players. There's a lot of a breath of fresh air with a new GM. And so I think the expectations, even though the Penguins remain what they were last year, which is a team with a significantly aging core that missed the playoffs a year ago, I think there was almost elevated expectations, and I agree with you. I listened to the press conference they had down in Pittsburgh today, and sort of the tone of it, it really does seem like that the team is under a bit of fire, and by extension, Kyle Dubas, who's was pulling the strings for them last offseason. I think it's a really difficult spot because we all know it's coming eventually that someone's going to will be presumably Kyle. He signed a 7-year deal there, but eventually there's some kind of rebuild coming. They're going to have to say goodbye to these legacy players that have put 3 banners up, Stanley Cup banners up in their building. But they're trying to push that off as far as possible, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. Dubas owned everything today. I felt like he's saying if the depth isn't good enough, it's on me. You're right. He shielded Mike Sullivan from any criticism. There's still a long bit of runway left on the season, but they're kind of battling Father Time in addition to all the teams around them in the standings. And I think it's going to be pretty compelling stretch here up to the deadline to see if they can hang in the race. And if they don't, whether they start making sort of more forward-looking moves or not.
I think what's got to be concerning is they've been very healthy. Like Gensel, Sid, Malkin, Carlson, Riley Smith, Chris Letang, they've played every game. Yeah. They haven't missed a game. So it's not like, Sid's out, Gino's out. These guys are all playing, and they're still, they're 6 points out of the playoffs. And they played a fair amount of games. I mean, I think Pittsburgh is legitimately in big, big trouble. And, again, we'll see what Dubas does because you mentioned the legacy pieces. Like, Sid's not going anywhere. Gino's not going anywhere. Letang's not. And now Carlson's not. Like, you brought in Carlson, and you got San Jose to take some of the money or keep some of the money. I don't know how he gets out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Well, and they traded a first-round pick in that deal, too. So, I mean, that's a sign of what they were thinking.
Right. Exactly, that they turned things around here. And, Pitt and Dubas, they're in some trouble. And I think they're in town this week, too, right? Dubas will be returning. I'm sure we'll get to that later in the week. But as for the Leafs, they're in Long Island tonight. And we were discussing the idea of John Tavares hitting 1,000 points against the Islanders, which I think would be very fitting. I'm just not sure how the fan base down there might react to it, CJ, and even how the team would react. Do you think if Tavares had 2 points tonight in regulation, the Islanders, would they acknowledge that milestone of hitting 1,000 points tonight or not?
Ooh, intriguing question. I haven't thought of that. I mean, I have to think they would. I mean, at some point, it's water under the bridge, isn't it? I mean, that was 5 years ago, I think, that game where he went back to Nassau Coliseum and they're throwing snakes in the ice and all that kind of nonsense. So I was there that night. It was probably one of the craziest things I've seen in the NHL arena, just the level of animosity that was dialed up. I mean, I have to feel like with each successive year, that goes down a bit. I'm sure the fans won't be cheering for him to do it. But if you reach that mark, I mean, he'd be the first player in his draft class by a mile to get there. I think that he's more or less turned into the kind of player he was projected to be and had a lot of that success on Long Island. So I'd like to think bygones will be bygones, but it's hard for me to predict. I mean, Lou's a pretty classy guy in a lot of ways. I just can't see his team not acknowledging that, but it'd be great to see it because we'll at least get an answer to that hypothetical.
Ooh, no kidding. And, Samsonov going tonight. We presume that Martin Jones will go tomorrow. We were discussing that earlier today, CJ, like how much of an opportunity this is for Samsonov to obviously get his game back, and that's what they need out of him, but also for Martin Jones to possibly make this a battle. Like Joseph Woll is going to be out for a while, right? Like he's out likely at least 4 to 6 weeks. If it's a couple of months, you're talking 30 games. Like Martin Jones is likely going to get some play. And if Samsonov plays the way he has, throughout the season and Jones steps in and plays really well, I don't think Sheldon Keefe would feel any obligation to just hand stars to Samsonov. He'll go with the hot hand.
Yeah, no, by no means do I think anything will be handed to Samsonov. I mean, that's part of the reason Martin Jones is here, right? I mean, the Leafs gave him a pretty good contract to be a third goaltender. But, this guy spent the last, whatever number of years in the NHL, played a lot last year in Seattle. And I think he saw an opportunity here just coming to a situation where, Samsonov hadn't totally proven himself, that, even as strong as the season was last year. Obviously, Joseph Woll was always, slotted ahead of Jones to start the campaign, and Jones knew that in coming here. But, there's a lot of question marks around the goaltending. I think there still is to some degree, even as well as Woll, managed to play in the early stages of this season. So, I mean, it's absolutely, an opportunity for someone, frankly, who has the most experience of any of the Leafs goalies, who's been in the most big games and even playoff games and everything over his career. I don't know at this stage, what he's got left, how well he can perform in that window of time, but I don't think that anything is promised. I mean, Samsonov will get everything be leaning in his direction right now, at least until it isn't, right? And if he falters, there's a lot of games on the schedule, which I think helps Jones as well. There's just all these sort of back-to-backs or 3 and 5 day kind of situations where you're going to be wanting to spread around the playing time. And, certainly if he plays well, which he did in that brief bit of relief in Ottawa when Woll went down, I think there is absolutely a chance for Jones to become, an important part of this Leafs season.
Some wild stuff in the NHL over the weekend with the Ottawa-Detroit game on Saturday night. Yeah. That got ugly. And Dylan Larkin placed on IR. Like, that was a tough scene. Really tough scene. And I believe they gave a major to Matthew Joseph originally, then reviewed it and turned it into just a 2-minute roughing call, which is what happened with the Cousins and Goodbranson situation, where it wasn't a roughing call. It was a hit they gave him a match penalty, I believe, then reviewed it and gave him 2 minutes for boarding. There's kind of an interesting usage of the review process.
I got to say this, and I don't want to be right on this. I've seen in the last week and a half 3 hits from behind that have not been good. Mm-hmm. Vander Kane didn't get penalized for the one against Minnesota. I forget his name. He got hurt, and I think he's on IR. Cousins on Goodbranson, that's in the numbers, square in the numbers.
He got him good, man.
And, that's what scares me. And there was a third one, too. What scares me is Brodin in Minnesota by Kane.
And he's on the IR, too.
You don't want somebody to end up paralyzed or something like that. The reaction, David Perron thought that Larkin
Zub got him, but it wasn't even Zub.
Zub's trying to help him. He's going to get clipped for 5 games.
Perron will, for sure.
Yeah. But Goodbranson was pissed. That's a reaction going, this guy ran me from behind and there was no reaction. I get all the toughness and the retribution. I still think guys turning their backs on plays and guys hitting each other from behind. The game is so fast, it's easier for me to say sitting in a chair than playing it right now. But that's what scares me. The hitting from behind in the league right now scares the hell out of me.
Absolutely. Where do you see those going, CJ?
Well, I mean, certainly if we were having a GM's meeting next week, I think that they'd be looking at it closely. I mean, the question will be, is this just a brief moment in time? Is this becoming something that's more prevalent? I mean, it jumps off when you see that the hits you're talking about happen over the course of a couple days. It's hard not to miss. I don't know if this is a larger trend or not, but you'd like. I'm with you, Noodles. It's dangerous how big the guys are, how fast these collisions are happening. Very dangerous type of situations, and it led to a little bit more chaos. So I don't know really what can be done. Obviously, you'd like to see the referees, enforcing the rule book and trying to discourage things that way. Obviously, supplemental discipline will do what they're going to do. Although in this case, you're going to see Goodbranson be the one who's going to take a knock because he got up and he had a hearing for for going after Cousins on that play. So it's hard to say what's going to happen, but I hope this isn't a trend. And if it is, I'm sure we're going to be talking about rule changes come March when the general managers gather for those sorts of things again.
But CJ, I mean, what rule would you change? It's pretty clearly illegal to do what these guys are doing. Isn't it more about the discipline and the fact that these guys, it's not being penalized in the way it should be penalized, either on the ice or off it, for that matter?
Right, and we were talking up top there, some of these were reviewed because of the way that the rules have been changed, where the refs, if they give out a major penalty, can actually go and look at the video to confirm that they think they saw what they thought they saw, and in the one case it ends up not being a major. I mean, maybe it comes down to just a message from Stephen Walkom to the referees about watching out for this sort of thing. But ultimately, it does lie with the players, and you want to have hopefully a little bit of respect out there. I know it's a competitive game; it's still a very aggressive game in a lot of ways, but we don't want anyone suffering a serious injury on one of these dirty plays.
And that's what's going to happen is you're going to see more Goodbranson situations.
Right.
Because that's the oldest rule in the book is when in doubt, the players will take care of it themselves. And I totally understood where Goodbranson was coming from. Personally, I don't think he should be suspended.
No.
Kick him out of the game if you want. Here's another thing. If Goodbranson laid there and got taken off on a stretcher,
We're talking about Nick Cousins.
Cousins
all
is
day
getting
long.
5 games, 10 games, but because he got up, it's just a boarding. Meanwhile, Goodbranson's going to get suspended. Cousins turtled twice. Cousins didn't get hurt. Goodbranson threw him to the ice and threw a couple of bombs, and Cousins turtled. So why should he get suspended when nothing happened to Cousins? And there was a time not that long ago, and I didn't play in the league, but I've heard a number of guys say it. O said it. Noodles, you said it. All guys would say it. Goodbranson's been in the league for like 15 years. Throwing that hit just would never have happened. Like, it was just a grizzled vet, because if you did and he got up, you were dead.
Yeah.
Like, it was understood. You don't call Stephen Walkham or ask George Peros, can you suspend him to take care of it? So you want to throw that hit against a guy who's been in the league that long and is tough as nails, go ahead. But you're going to pay a serious price for
And the
it.
Cousins hit was out of we just showed CJ 3 on TV, the Kane on Brodeen, and there was
Buffalo against Montreal.
against Barron. The Cousins one is the most egregious.
Dangerous.
He
fast.
launches himself. It launches himself right into his numbers. Now, Cousins not a big guy. He's a gritty guy. Gets underneath your skin. I get it. He has to play a certain way. But I have, Eric Goodbranson. That was later in the. I was watching that game. I don't know why. You guys. I watched
pay
that
me
game.
to watch that game.
I watched that game. I was like, that wasn't that shift.
No, later in the game.
He got him later in the game.
Came
It's
down
like,
his wing and said, you're gonna pay a
take you
price.
out. And that was the retribution. So, but Goodbranson's going to have to pay for that. Whereas I think 15 years ago, the refs are like, yeah, you get what you deserve type of thing. You earn that. But they have to call that. That has to be a major
I
call.
understand
That has to.
They're going to call Goodbranson. They're going to throw him out.
No, not Goodbranson.
You're saying Cousins should have
has to be
That's
called.
got to be a major. Yeah.
That's got to be called. That's where I have a problem with that. Is that's got to be called so that there's retribution right away.
Well, and then it takes it out of the hands of Goodbranson coming back to get you anyway.
Exactly.
In a way. You get out in front of it and you kick the guy out. But, again, these kind of things happen and they're bad. Like, even Perron's reaction, I would have much preferred drop your gloves and start throwing bombs. Don't cross-check a guy in the face.
And he just came back from a concussion.
And it wasn't even the guy that was involved in the Larkin
He's
situation.
trying to help the guy.
He's trying to help him. You come in and cross-check him in the face.
Yeah.
That's a really greasy, awful play that deserves a suspension. You drop your gloves and start throwing bombs, I'm okay with that. Right. Someone might get hurt, but at least that player can protect himself if need be.
Right.
But I look at even the reaction to that stuff over the weekend, like the Goodbranson stuff. When was the last time we had, bedlam on the ice? A line brawl off a face-off, all hell breaking loose.
It was the Florida game, wasn't it? The Florida game with
Florida
170 minutes
Florida
against
Senators.
Yeah, that was
Senators.
You're right, but that was more. That was 10 minutes. You're gone. 10 minutes. That wasn't
Yeah.
really like, whoa, this is ugly. Like, that was like competitive. You're losing the Kachucks. You're right. There were fights.
Yeah,
and that was crazy.
goalies going at it.
But even the idea that it was embarrassing, that used to come up all the time. Like, this is embarrassing for the league. You've got brawls and warm up, and that stuff doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen. The league has progressed greatly.
The one, wasn't it? JP just said, remember the Canucks Flames where Torch went over to the dressing room?
But that's
Right
10
after
years
Hartley.
ago.
Yeah, well, that was
like 10 years
Oh,
ago.
that was, I think
Maybe
it was
more
more
than
than
that.
10 years
It
ago,
was a long
wasn't it?
time
Because
ago.
Brian
Long time
McGrattan was kind of steering traffic there.
Yeah.
And Bob Hartley, when was he coaching the Flames? That was right after I
a while.
left. So that would have been, yeah, you're right, 10, 11 years ago.
In a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I don't know,
Jobs ago
CJ.
for Torts.
Yeah, well, Tort's doing a great job now, isn't he? Philly's maybe the best
They've won
story
4
in
in
the
a
league.
row right now, I think. They've done...
Incredible.
And of course, everyone loves, that was a great thing he did on the bench the other day with the...
Last week, with the kid on there.
Yeah, it was awesome.
No, you're right. They're second in the Metro.
They're hanging around there.
Then you look at Winnipeg. They won again yesterday, but
the
Kyle Connor, man.
See, there's another
There's
situation.
a knee on knee.
Knee on knee. Now, he got a 5-minute major. I wasn't sure. I was back and forth in that game, but he got a 5-minute major for kneeing, and then Scheifele went after him.
Oof.
Winnipeg's first in the West, I believe, and they just lost their top scorer.
Right.
There was a
That looked
black
bad
cloud
too,
over
man.
that game. Well, I'm concerned. I haven't even heard any news out of Winnipeg today.
No.
Have you heard anything, CJ?
MRI today.
Yeah, they're in San Jose, and he got an MRI today. I haven't heard the results, but obviously with the time change, we might still hear that later tonight.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, that one
That was
stings because
tough,
they've won
yeah.
4 in a row. Yeah, they're sitting above the Central. Hellebuck was great again last night. Connor, what's he got? 18 goals on the season.
Yeah,
He's been
16,
outstanding.
He's right there.
Velarde just got back. Velarde got his first goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Winnipeg, they're in a good spot. Like they've banked a lot of points, and,
Right now,
and
yeah.
we'll see where it goes. All right, CJ, enjoy the games tonight, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. Best bets later in the hour. TSN 1050's Leafs lineup. Your chance to win Leaf tickets every week, all season long. Every weekday, we announce a current or former Maple Leaf player, and on Fridays, you have a chance to call in and name the Leaf lineup for the week. Name all 5 players you're going to see a future Maple Leaf game. The game we're giving away this week, Leafs-Rangers,
Ooh.
December 19th. That's a big game.
That's a good game.
We've been giving away great games.
Yes.
Leafs-Rangers, December 19th. Plus, we're throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card with each pair of tickets to make it the ultimate game night. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro-Canada. Today's player of the day is Jeff Jackson. Jeff Jackson, who's ecstatic out in Edmonton. They've won 7 in a row.
Wow.
Jeff Jackson. Yeah, he
All
was
the
a
right
Leaf.
buttons.
Yeah, he's got an alumni jacket.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he'll be wearing that anytime soon.
And the Oilers are here. You think he'll wear it? Imagine if he walked in the alumni
It'd be
box
hilarious. That would be hysterical if he's up in the alumni box.
with his jacket on.
Yeah,
Him and Dougie G.
he should. He's a respected alumni.
Just looking back at that Torts Bob Hartley
Exchange.
When was
exchange.
that?
That was the 10-year anniversary. Will be next month.
Okay.
Wow.
So it was 10 years
But
ago.
Torts threw out. The Flames threw out their 4th line to start the game. The Canucks put Kevin Bieksa, defenseman Kevin Bieksa,
Yeah.
in to take the opening draw, and a line ball
like it.
immediately broke out.
Yeah. And then it was Bob Hartley's fault.
And then Torts went after Hartley
Yeah.
in the first intermission and got
we don't
suspended
have
for
that.
15 days.
We don't have that type of like rivalry and hatred right now.
Not really. Like
Between
even
teams.
the Battle of Alberta, any of that kind of stuff really isn't there right now.
Yeah.
We got to
Yeah,
get that
it's
back.
I haven't seen
maybe
two
Ottawa,
coaches
Florida.
doing that. Like I haven't seen a coach put out the 4th line because
That's what I'm
Hartley
saying.
would
It
have
never
to start
happens
his
anymore.
4th line, so Torts starts Bieksa to
Yeah,
fight. Like
right.
that's a calculated. Like we're doing this right now. He's doing this to me. I'm doing that to him.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Chess, not checkers.
Torts
man.
hated Hartley.
Hated Hartley. Hated. I think I got the impression a lot of people were kind of
Yeah.
anti-Hartley in the end. All right, Robert Herjavec will join us. He's famously on a plane on
Yes.
Friday. He was on a plane. When did he know that he was not Shohei Ohtani? We'll get you that answer, and we'll do it next. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Funny business on the group chat because Luke and O are complaining that the spread for the Miami-Tennessee game was 13.5.
Yes.
And right before the bet, it went up to 14 on FanDuel.
So it doesn't matter. It's still 13.5.
Well, afterwards it went down to 13.5, but we locked in the bet at 14. So these guys are all complaining. They're like, it's 13.5. Doogie's screwing us. I'm like, no, it was 14. And these guys are indicating they're soft, they're gutless, and they're concerned because Al's brother and I, tremendous information, married with gut instinct, it's over.
And you're on a 2-win run.
2-win run, which is significant, Dave.
Yeah.
I know you're not saying that sarcastically. We feel very good about our chances
But
of
no,
storming
and
back.
as a neutral observer,
yeah.
you locked it in at 14.
That's
There's
right.
no-
That's
there's
the way
no
it
funny
goes.
business.
I'll bet you the Packers line will get back to 6 by kickoff.
Yeah.
It dropped to 5.5 right before we picked.
Lines move.
You got to lock it in, man. What
Lines
do you want
move.
out of me?
Lock it in.
Yes, we are men of integrity. Al's brother and I are anyway. The other two, I can't say that.
no.
Anyway, Friday was a whirlwind, man. We were on the show. We came on at 4. And everyone was tracking this private bird out of Anaheim.
Yes.
Like one plane that showed up on the grid overnight, I believe it was, or late the night before. Right.
yeah.
And someone online was like, man, that's kind of interesting. Someone's flying in from LA to Toronto.
Yeah.
As if LA to Toronto is some random
It's
flight
just a
path.
random flight path, and there's nobody who flies private planes other than a baseball player,
Right.
potentially.
Lots of money in LA, lots of money in Toronto.
Yeah.
So the private bird gets established, and everyone's like, well, clearly that's got to be Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
Turns out it wasn't. Turns out it was Robert Herjavec, and now Robert's got to answer for it. I'm sure he's had a hilarious 72 hours because it's his fault that he wasn't on a bird with Shohei Ohtani coming up here. But Speaking of the devil, here he is, Canadian businessman, investor, television personality, making his debut here. There's Robert Herjavec. How you doing, Robert?
I'm wonderful. I'm so disappointed that I get on TSN because I got mistaken for a 6'3" Japanese baseball player.
How dare you, Robert? Do you understand how many people you let down on Friday?
Here's the crazy thing, guys. I had no idea. I'm the most connected guy in the world. I own a big tech company. But on this flight, it was just me and my 5.5-year-old twins who were losing it on the flight. So I turned my phone off. I turn my computer off. I'm feeding them, playing with them. We land, and there's a bunch of customs guys. I turn my phone off. The customs guys come on the phone and go, "Where's Ohtani?" And then my texts start coming in. I put 2 and 2 together. They didn't even ask for my passport. They were so excited. And then so disappointed it was me. I've never been more humbled in my life.
Right. Well, I'm sure. I mean, how often do you make that trip? Like, are you in LA a lot, going LA to Toronto? Because a lot of people were wondering why that private jet got onto the grid. So take us through that.
Because, I'm the only rich guy in the world with his own plane.
Right,
Nobody
exactly.
else has his own plane. No, we have a house. It wasn't Anaheim. It was actually Santa Ana.
Okay.
And we have a house down there, and we have a house in Toronto. So I fly that thing all the time. I have no idea how it all started, but apparently we were the most tracked airplane in the world for a period of time.
Yep.
So you turn on your phone. Do you honestly have 480 messages going? Like, is that you up there? Is that like, do you literally have to go through all these messages and people asking you, are you on the Ohtani plane?
I literally have hundreds of messages from my friends who are like, "Are you buying the Blue Jays? How do you know Ohtani? Why didn't you tell us? Can you get us tickets? When is he starting?" All that kind of stuff. But what was funny is I thought it was a big sports story. And then as I'm driving out, I turn on the radio and people are tracking the flight. The Ohtani flight has landed. Then I felt really bad.
So, Robert, the conspiracy theorists, of course, have suggested that you're essentially a pawn in a chess game here to drive up the price for Mr. Ohtani, that you're represented by the same agency, and they sent that plane, those dastardly devils from CAA sent that plane across the country to get Ohtani more money. What do you say to that?
I'm a huge business mogul. I am getting a cut of the $700 million. No, we do have the same agency, but if my agent was negotiating a $700 million deal for me, I would actually talk to him more often. So that's it. We just have the same agency, not involved at all.
With Robert Herjavec, obviously Canadian businessman, investor, TV personality, and flight connoisseur who flew from Southern California up to Toronto on Friday and was shocking the world. You mentioned that. There were like thousands and thousands of people around the world tracking your plane, which is wild.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, it was trending. And
I need to know who to fire for giving out my tail number.
Right. Well, it's out now, and I'm curious. Like the last 72 hours, where you're from Toronto. I'm assuming you're a sports fan. I don't know if you're a Blue Jay fan, but when you were returning messages and people were wondering, how it came about, how you got on that bird, like were you trying to allow people to understand like the ridiculousness of all this, or were you feeding into it? Were you having fun with it?
What's funny is I landed, I realized what a big story was, how the world was tracking this flight. Then I fell into it. I thought, oh, maybe they just mixed up my tail number. Maybe he's behind me. Right. He's about to land. Then I got sucked into the whole Ohtani thing until he signed with the Dodgers, which was very disappointing. But I will tell you, the Blue Jays reached out to us today. Haven't had a chance to call them back. So I'm still holding hope that I may get signed for next season.
It's a possibility. Maybe you'll sign a similar deal to the one Ohtani just signed. I think you're the perfect guy to ask. I mean, obviously you're a businessman. You're big into money. Where he signed the $700 million deal, and he's deferring $680 million of it. He's only going to get paid $2 million a year throughout the 10-year contract, and then after that, he's going to make what, $680 million for the following 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, after he retires, basically,
Right.
he deferred it until after, but he's making $2 million a year and deferring 68.
Right. What people don't realize is when I lived in California, Matt Stafford from the Rams was one of my neighbors, and he told me this because I was like, "Why would you move to California? I mean, obviously to play for the Rams, but you'll pay more tax." The way the baseball players and NFL players, and you guys know this, they get taxed based on the cities they play in. So it doesn't matter what state they're resident in, they're going to get taxed. If they play 100 games and in different states, they pay tax in all of those states at a time.
Right.
It is impossible to avoid paying taxes, but really smart financial planners find a way to defer it. So all he's doing is, instead of paying today, he's going to pay it one day down the road when he'll make less endorsements, less income, and in effect pay a little bit less tax. It's a smart move.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. That's massive money to defer. You mentioned the endorsements. He's making $45 million a year or something in endorsements. So even at $2 million to play ball, the guy's still going to be one of the highest paid athletes in the world. But
he's doing great.
Yeah, he's doing pretty well. I would say he's doing pretty well. But $680 million waiting for you down the road, interest free too, right? It's just basically going to be a bold number.
Yeah.
I guess from the Dodgers' perspective, can you reason with that, Robert? What do the Dodgers benefit from paying him that much money down the road?
Yeah, but let's be honest. What's $700 million after tax? $350 million clear. I mean, what can you do with that? Can you even make a living on that today?
He'll find a way.
No, it's a trick.
Uh-oh. There you go. Were they
Look
on
how
the
Canadian
flight?
we are.
Were
I've
they
got
on the
the babies
flight?
here. And Tim Horton,
There
Timbits,
we
baby.
go.
Yes,
Nice.
you're back home.
There you go.
There you go. All right, you're a busy guy, Robert. We'll let you go, but we appreciate the insight. Thank you for doing
Thank you,
this.
guys.
All right, there he is,
Yeah,
Robert Herjavec with the kids. He's back home in Toronto.
Why he turned his phone off.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, this is what I have to deal with all the
two
time.
twins,
so
so yeah,
what are you going to do but have fun with it? I know there's a lot of Blue Jay fans bitter about the way things played out on Friday, upset that Ohtani's not a Blue Jay. I'm with you on that. But it's not Robert's fault.
No.
The idea that it was a conspiracy theory that CAA, get your plane fired up, get on the grid, then we're going to call the Dodgers. I mean, come on.
No.
Well,
Crazy.
it's not. I don't believe the conspiracy theory, but
No.
I do believe that the Dodgers were nervous, and they've said as much. And it probably.
Well, I think
drove
the
up price a little bit.
confusion probably helped Ohtani.
Yeah,
For sure.
But I don't think Robert was in on the
No.
confusion.
But
is my
this-
point.
I don't think he is at all. But it's funny because I would like to trace back to the initial tweet, who started not John Morosi, who started the flight tracker,
Right, and got that on the radar.
got that going.
Right. I don't know.
We had the only other flight tracker I remember was on this show was Babs.
Yeah, Babcock.
Are we
was
sitting
Babs.
here and it was like,
Kawhi had one.
Kawhi
too.
had one.
Oh, that's right.
And
That's
the reason
right.
why those were tracked was because it was the MLSE plane, which
It has to be registered or something like that.
people know
People
what
know
it
the
is.
tail number. Yeah.
Right. And that's what Robert's saying. He's like, that's my plane. Obviously, he owns the plane.
Yeah.
And, I don't think it's not a security risk or anything.
But no one gave out his tail number. I think the point, the flight tracking guys saw the flight path was going to go from Santa Ana to Toronto, which is a fairly rare route.
Right.
Which is what tipped them off that it could be Ohtani.
Right.
Right.
Because, I saw, again, people online were like, his house is within 15 minutes of this airport.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
if he was going to take a private bird out, he's probably going to avoid LAX.
Guess whose house is within 15 minutes of that airport too? Robert's.
Yeah,
probably.
exactly. Yeah.
He's like, I fly back there all the time. He's like, I got a house.
Drake used to live in LA. I don't know if he does anymore. I'll bet you he took that flight 3 or 4 times a year.
Oh, yeah.
And it'd be a private bird, the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Flying out of whatever airport it was going to be. But
Well, you can. I mean, there's all different. You're right, Santa Ana. There are, you to LAX. It's just a different terminal. Like I've got buddies who've flown private into Toronto. It's just the different terminal. They go over to the private terminal.
right.
I think that's how the Leafs fly too, right? They don't.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not walking through.
No, I'm sure all the teams do, yeah.
So it's funny how that unfolded because you're right. He's a tech guy, but he had his kids bothering him. He's turned his phone off.
Yeah.
So that, if he had his phone on, he would have probably just messaged somebody. It's like, it's my plane. What are you guys doing?
What's going on here?
He could have saved us an hour and a half on air of watching his plane.
What are you going to do?
That's wild,
I told
man.
somebody the other day, though, if you look at our mood from 4 o'clock to 5:30, if we were wearing heart rate monitors or something, at 4 o'clock you're kind of in disbelief. You're like, all right, like we start to believe, we start talking ourselves into it too. I was like, well, Max Domi wouldn't tweet that out if
right,
you know, like
right.
So
Yeah.
now we start talking ourselves into it. Our mood, like at 5 o'clock, everyone's kind of like dancing around, and then Bob Nightingale put that tweet out, and it was just like the air out of the balloon.
Immediately
It's like,
deflated
okay.
because you knew it's like, all right, it's done now.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't, like you were trying to save yourself, myself included, all of us
Yeah.
were like, well, he still could be coming
Yeah.
to the Jays. It just felt like it was an immediate, like, no, it's done.
Yeah.
Like he's not flying here
And
tomorrow
then some
or the
other
next day.
reporters
Yeah.
doubled down on
And you're like,
Yes.
Nightingale's tweet.
No, exactly. Everyone started jumping on.
Confirming
Like,
Nightingale's
he's there. He's not coming to Toronto. He's not
Yeah.
leaving Southern California. It's like,
So
all
it
right, it's
wasn't-
done.
Yeah, it wasn't one rogue
Yeah.
reporter making another mistake.
I do wonder if it weren't for the kind of ridiculousness of Friday, if it wouldn't have ended Saturday.
right.
Like, we're looking at it from a Dodger perspective that the Dodgers may have called and said, we'll give you this more, we
Yeah,
want to really
yeah.
get it done. But maybe even Ohtani's camp and Ohtani was like, we got to end this. It's getting
Yeah.
goofy now. Like, we're starting to piss people off.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, maybe we
Yeah.
need to make a decision here.
Because at a certain point, they were asking for privacy and,
Right.
and, and secrecy, but you can't have that forever.
No.
When you're the most talked about athlete on the planet.
And in retrospect, it seems very obvious. He probably knew he was going to be a Dodger for a long time.
yeah.
Like, now you look back on it, and that's what makes you feel stupid. You're like, he wasn't really seriously thinking about
Yeah.
the Jays.
Him and his
Or the
he's probably telling
Giants
his
or-
buddies are like, no, I'm
Yeah.
going to LA.
Like, I'm going to LA every day.
Yeah.
Every day of the week. I'm staying in Southern California, and I'm going to play with the Dodgers.
But you needed to hold an auction, and you can't have an auction with one bidder.
Yeah.
Not a very good one, anyways.
That's true.
That's very valid. And Ohtani's a Dodger. And the Dodgers are coming to Toronto, I think, in late April. I think they're rolling through town.
Oh, well,
So-
watch him and
Go see Ohtani play for the LA Dodgers. We'll see. And the idea of booing him would be ridiculous.
No.
Like, he didn't do anything. He didn't say anything publicly.
No.
But it was close. There was a private bird. Anything was possible. All right. Leafs in action tonight. Raptors in action tonight. We'll get to our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. They're going to cross over in the Leaf game and the Raptor game tonight. Bo Horvat over 2.5 shots on net. Pascal Siakam 20 points or more tonight. Pay him plus money. I think Siakam's going to get points tonight. And Horvat, you only got to pay a little bit of juice on that. The Islanders are actually putting up some offense.
Yeah.
Like, the Islanders are playing well right now. The Leafs are in one tonight.
Well, it'll be a good game.
Gonna be a fun game.
it's, You know, the
It's a great
goalies
trip for the dads, too, right? You go down to
Yeah.
New York, Islanders
yeah.
tonight, Rangers tomorrow. It's brilliant.
It'll be awesome. Like they get to stay in New York. The problem is with the dad's trip back to back, you'd kind of like it spaced out so you could take your dad for dinner and all of that. So maybe it'll be a little bit.
Probably last night, I guess,
maybe
right?
last night.
Because they were all in town for the game Saturday.
Yeah, so they
probably
flew in
flew out
yesterday.
yesterday.
Last night would have been a big night.
Yeah, have a fun night. The dads will be fired up
Dads will
tonight,
be hungover today.
as they should be. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. FanDuel's goal in the first 10 minutes is the most electric bet in hockey and can be included in any same-game parlay on any NHL game. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. So, yeah, Leafs in New York, Raptors in New York tonight. And
Who do you have more faith in?
I have more faith in the Leafs tonight. Raps are only a 4.5-point dog.
Yeah.
But
But you look at their numbers against good defenses, and the Knicks have a top 10 defense.
Not
Like
good.
The Raptors are 1-5 against top 10 defenses. Not
that's troublesome.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't feel good about the Raps. Like, something's going to give. I saw another report today. Siakam, maybe he'll get dealt. OG. Like, I'll believe it when I see it because
Right.
signing company aren't. And they're not, I don't think they're going to do anything this early in the year.
Right.
But they're 9-13.
Yeah.
They're on the outside of the play-in in the East.
That's tough to do.
Well, I mean,
Like, it's
yeah.
still early, but it's not. a
It's
good
getting
season.
late early,
Yes.
because what's going to change, right? You don't shoot it well. Well, who's going to shoot? Nobody. Like they don't have a path to being a better shooting team, and they
No.
rank 30th in 3-point shooting.
Right, exactly. There's no game plan
I mean-
for chalking that up.
I mean, I guess
can't
if Grady
shoot, you can't
Dick,
shoot.
if Grady Dick suddenly developed into a playable guy,
Oof.
he's not even tearing up the
He's not ready.
905 yet.
Yeah. He's not ready. He's not ready to play. The problem is they've given up their first-round pick to San Antonio.
Yes.
Now, it's top 6 protected, But if you're gonna try to make sure it's in the top 6, you better start really losing.
Yeah.
And the problem is they're not going to catch, quote unquote, Detroit or San Antonio or like those teams are Washington. They're brutal. They're so far behind.
They might have to start dumping.
They might have to start dumping and then still hope to win the lottery.
Yeah.
To keep your pick.
That's true.
Anyway, we'll see what happens. All right, boys. Good seeing you guys.
Seeing you.
As always. Dave, great seeing you.
Good
Dave,
stuff.
Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate that. Everyone for tuning in today, radio, TV, podcast, web. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy your games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.